say thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I, like all of you, I'm a student. Not here at Dean. I'm kind of at Holyoke High. I might like me for all that, but I really wanted to really give an introduction to a great man who's coming to speak today. I had a chance to meet him, earlier on this summer, and he was a really great guy. This is a man of integrity. He drove, a few hours down to Boston just to come talk to you. And he's not, some adult figure trying to talk down to y'all, telling you to do this, telling you to go to school and do all this, don't do drugs. I'm gonna let you know everything he's telling you is coming from the heart. I've talked to this guy, had one-on-one conversations, and he's from the same streets that we are. Not Holyoke, but he's from Boston. And we deal with the same things. I've been out there and I've seen what's out there. And the same issues we got going on here is the same things they got going on out there. So he knows every single thing that, not every experience y'all got, but he knows what y'all deal with roughly. He knows, the exact things that poison our streets, the drugs, the gangs, etc. So he's been there and he's done that. And I met this guy and he's just, he's a great guy. I'm going to just keep it a buck with you. I wouldn't, if I had to choose any speaker, anyone in the world, I would probably pick this guy to come down here. He's, I like to sit here and give this guy a crazy introduction, but I can't. The only way that can happen is if I really let him do it himself. His story himself is just gonna blow you away. So without further ado, I'd like to really give you Will Morales.
Thanks, Jake. Firstly, I'm Will Morales, and I am the Commissioner of Boston Centers of Youth and Families, so I work for the Mayor of Boston. I'm actually one of only 2 Latinos who are in leadership roles within the city of Boston, and I'm very fortunate that the Mayor happens to be a good personal friend, and that he picked me for this position, because he actually sought me out for this job, okay? But if I talk to you a little bit about what my professional career is, I spent about 14 years working with the YMCAs, working my way all the way up from a youth worker up to an executive director, up to a senior position within the Ys. I've been a senior vice president at a college, at Wheelock College, where I founded an office called the Office of Community Partnerships and Programs, and I worked 6 years in the ski industry, all right? In snow sports and winter sports. And being a Puerto Rican in winter sports, trust me, I used to drive them crazy because they didn't understand what I was doing there, all right? So I enjoyed that stuff. And in between, I was a cast member of a television show, and I've actually done some work internationally too as well. I've been to Ireland to do youth work. I've done it in Colombia, and I've also done it in Brazil as well. But if I tell you my story and where it began, it actually began in Comerío, Puerto Rico. All right? Where I was born in the same house that my grandmother was born and my mother was born, okay? And I would be the last one to do so. But I was born to teen parents, a father who was a heroin-addicted individual, and a mom who only thing she wanted to do and go in life was to be a mother and love her children. But unfortunately, my father's drug addiction made life a little bit hard. And by the time I was 7 years old, I was fixing my father's heroin stash. And I would go buy my father's stash, because that was the expectation that was put on me. At the age of 8, my Uncle Chucho was killed in front of me. And I can still remember hearing the gunshot and parts of his brain hit my face. And that traumatic experience forced my mother to leave where we lived in Brooklyn, New York, to come to Boston, Massachusetts. She emancipated herself from that relationship because what she was trying to do is save her 2 sons and try to give them a better life. But unfortunately, my mom didn't speak that much English. She didn't have that much skills. She didn't understand how to run a budget or how to run a household. She didn't understand it's not only just paying the rent, it was also paying the heat. We had plenty of nights and where all we ate was basically rice with eggs because we couldn't afford the meat. And that's how tough it was for us. By the time I was 12, my mother sat down and talked to me and my brother and said, "Papi, Mommy has to go to a shelter. And I'm going to have to put you guys in foster care." And being a Latino male and that machismo, and being 12, my family's breaking up because we don't have no money. I knew where to find the money. Corner of School Street in Washington, Anderson Square in Roxbury, neighborhood I grew up in. And see, I grew up during a time where crack can change your financial reality really quick. And I dove into that world. When I dove into that world, all my options ceased. By the time I was 14, I was a bilingual student in the New York City system, but when I came to Boston, the lack of translation services, they put me in a regular program here. So I suffered academically. And at 14, I was confronted by Miss Yearwood, a teacher who was from Barbados, and she told me, "Child, I know you know how to read." And it was correct. I did not know how to read. The sad thing is I didn't know how to read and write in Spanish either. So at 14, I walked away from high school. And I always tell people that I committed the biggest criminal act in my life, because what I did, as soon as I walked away from my education, then that's it. My fate was sealed on the streets. There wasn't going to be any more options for me. By the time I was 15, I was stabbed twice. 16, I was shot. And by the time I was 17, I was deemed such a threat to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that I was given a 10-year mandatory sentence to state prison. And that's where I went off to grow up. There I was, entering an institution with the rest of the no-goods, still trying to figure out my manhood. And I was content. I was just like any other boy of color who went to prison, who ran the game on the streets. If I do these 10 years, when I get back out, I'm going to have mad respect from my heads and my block. Because everything was about my block. I was willing to die for my block. I was willing to rep my block. But at the end, all I got was a cell block. And there I was, content. 2.5 years into my sentence, I'm chilling one night and I'm watching Seinfeld, some corny show. And I hear a news bulletin that a young man opened fire on 2 Boston police officers with a 12-gauge Mossberg shotgun at the corner of School Street in Washington. I remember jumping off my bed and I glorified like the second coming of Jesus Christ. I thought I was Pentecostal. I was speaking in tongues. That's how happy I was. I was bragging and telling everybody, turn on the TV and see what's going on. Check it out. Look what my boys are doing. Because I thought I needed that event to continue to try to establish my little reputation within the 4 walls. And at this time, I'm in SCCI Garner. I'm not even that far from here. I went to bed with a Kool-Aid smile, thinking I was the baddest thing in the world. Thinking about the next day I'm going to get praises. Because you see, if you're known for shooting cops, you're like a god in prison. And if you run with a crew that's known for doing that, like the crew that I ran with, because we were known as a street gang that was not known for attacking other gang members. We attacked police officers. So they really didn't like us. But at 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 correctional officers come to my cell. I thought they were going to run a goon squad. It was a goon squad is when they're actually coming in to try to get contraband out of you. And they just said, Morales, you need to come with us. You need to come to the office, and you need to take a call. So I'm thinking, cool, I'll just go and take the call. What could it be? I'm not thinking that what I saw the night before had to do anything with me, because they didn't mention any names. All they said is the assailant opened fire on 2 police officers. So when I picked up the phone, I could hear a house in pain. I could hear people crying, but most importantly, I could hear my mother's distinct screech, her pitch. Because you see, that was the same cry that she had when I got shot, and she was crying in the hallway outside the hospital. And I could recognize it. And when somebody was on the phone trying to find her, and they found her and they said, your son Willie's on the phone, I could hear my mother doing this, and she took a deep breath. And she said to me in Spanish, Yo esperaba esto de ti. Yo esperaba esto de ti. She expected that from me. And I'm like, what's going on? She hung up the phone, and as soon as she hung up the phone, I had to have one of the guards gently touch me in the elbow and tell me, sorry to hear about your brother. He got into a shootout last night with the 2 police officers. He was my only brother. I don't got no more sisters. I don't got nobody else. He was the baby. He was Junior. He was the total opposite of me. The one who could read and write. The one who played 5 musical instruments and nobody taught him how to play them. All right? The one who was in middle school, went to one of the better middle schools in the Boston public school system, and then on top of it was the chess champion for the city and represented the city of Boston against suburban schools. Repping and doing it correctly. He was the one in our family that we put all our hopes that he was going to graduate from high school. Because we didn't think he was going to make it to college, but he was going to graduate from high school. But something happened, and when I got locked up, the game became real for him too. And he was trying to follow his big brother's footsteps. And unfortunately, I don't know why he chose that he can go toe-to-toe with 2 police officers. I had friends of mine telling me he went out like a trooper, but inside my heart, I wish he went out like a sucker. And I remember the weeks that followed. You know, I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral. I could never say goodbye to him. But I kept remembering and saying, my brother had a life. He was going to make something out of his life. And I remember saying to myself, I'm going to live a little bit of my life for him. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And I figured one of the biggest problems that I had was my inability to read and write. So if I'm serving a sentence, you better come out of prison knowing how to read and write. And I made that commitment to education because I knew that if I could read and write, I could fill out a job application the next time around. And I don't have to depend on the dope on the streets to get me through anymore. And so I committed myself to that. Fast forward, I get out of prison. I have the harsh realities. I come back, to a community that doesn't want me because I was the worst out of the 2 brothers, supposedly. Okay? I come back, and the police department is on my butt because they thought I had an avenge agenda. They thought I wanted to kill the 2 police officers that killed my brother. I come back, BHA, which is the Boston Housing Authority, who holds my mother's Section 8 certificate, told her, if he spends 1 night in the house, we're going to take it away from you. So I'm homeless. I'm jumping couch to couch at friends' houses. Some of my friends are cool, some of my friends are still in the game. Everything was against me. My refuge came only because I kept saying to myself, live a little bit of your life for your brother. The aftermath of my brother's death, a little YMCA opened. And I started hanging at the YMCA. And that became my place of refuge. And it was within that Y that I found my calling to become a youth worker. Because what was happening, for the very first time in my life, some of the young men that were surrounding me were los hermanitos of the guys that I ran the streets with. And their brothers were locked or their brothers were dead. And I had an opportunity to do something right for them that wasn't done for me. And I remember when I made that commitment to become a youth worker, I said to myself, I wrote it on a piece of paper and I said, become the person that wasn't there for you. And that's my personal statement every day, to be the person that wasn't there for me. And I work hard to do that every day. What happened was 19 months after I get out of prison, the passion that I had to help my community got me the job to become the director of the center. I've never managed anything in my life. I never knew what a budget was. I still was struggling with my reading and writing. By no means am I proficient, okay? But I kept diving into the education. That became very important. That by the time I was 29,